Hey, good morning. I'm Dr. Stites, Chief Medical Officer here at the University of Kansas Health System. Welcome back to Open Mics with Dr. Stites. We know that all healthcare is based on both science and research, but unless you've worked in a lab, you've probably never had a chance to directly affect the future of medicine until now. That's our main focus this morning. We'll get back to that in a moment, as well as check in with Doc Hawk on COVID numbers after last week's kind of big old jump. But first, let's do our morning rounds. Dr. Julia White is here to discuss new breast cancer research that could change how certain patients get treated. Dr. White is a radiation oncologist here at the University of Kansas Center who also serves on several national committees focused on breast cancer treatment and research. She helped lead this clinical trial, the results of which were presented earlier this month at the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium. Good morning, Dr. White. Thanks for being with us today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to talk about this.
This is going to be awesome. Many breast cancer patients get a combination of treatment methods: chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, and maybe even some targeted therapy called immunotherapy. But this research found that in a certain scenario, patients can skip some radiation. I'm going to bet a lot of people are happy to skip radiation. Talk to us about what that scenario looks like.
So this is really exciting because this is for women who are at higher risk. Lots of when we look at de-escalating treatment or omitting treatment, it's for women who are very low risk. But if your lymph nodes are positive with breast cancer, you are at a higher risk of breast cancer, and that means you're generally going to get chemotherapy, immunotherapy, surgery, and radiation. And what we found with this trial, we asked the question, well, if you start with your chemotherapy first, and at the time of surgery, if we no longer can find your cancer, meaning it's gone away because of the chemotherapy, do you really need the radiation? And we started this trial back in 2013. We brought in 1,600 women, about 800 got the radiation, 800 didn't. And at 5 years of follow-up on those patients, I am happy to tell you that you don't need the radiation. So if you go through several months of chemo, have to go through a surgery and have to heal from that, after that, your lymph nodes are clear when the pathologist looks at them, you don't need the radiation. So this is really exciting.
And that's a big deal. So what does that change for patients and providers? I mean, they get to sit and have a kind of a different conversation then.
They do. And what's so nice about it is you can imagine if you've been at treatment for several months, almost 9 months, to not have to go through the radiation, which is Monday through Friday, 5 days a week for 3 to 6 weeks. Not only that, many women want reconstruction. And the radiation and the reconstruction sometimes don't work well together, and the radiation can cause more complications, even though it's life-saving in some women. But what we learn is it doesn't make a difference, that you can go through the chemotherapy, and if your cancer goes away in your lymph nodes at the time of surgery, you're going to do great. And I think that's the best message, is when we looked at these women at 5 years, more than 90% were alive and well and free of cancer. So it's all great news.
Well, that is, I mean, that's an impressive survival at 5 years to be 90% cancer-free.
92%.
Okay, well, let's give her a darn percent. And so, so really it's all about that lymph node. If it's clear, you're clear. Is that the answer?
It's the answer. The answer is if your medication responds, if your cancer responds to the chemotherapy or immunotherapy that you're delivering that's starting off because your lymph nodes is positive. And I think I want to put in that this is for triple-negative breast cancer and HER2-positive breast cancers, the two types that require a lot of medications to be treated. So that going through all that medication, if your cancer goes away in your lymph node, there is an advantage that you won't need the radiation. You can go ahead and get your surgery, recuperate, and be on your way.
All right, and were there any limitations on these findings? Or
the only limitations is it's 5 years, and we'll make sure we follow these women out to 10 years. And from that, we'll make sure that everything stays steady and the news stays good.
So just to say, how many patients who, after they get the chemotherapy, go to surgery, how many of them would you say are going to be in a position that they're going to have had their lymph nodes cleared of
Half
cancer?
of them.
That's really good
50% of them will no longer need radiation.
Well, you know, and this is a really big trial, and sometimes these trials have really cool, snappy names. This one is called NRG Oncology /NSABP B51 /RTOG 1304. That's pretty cool there. When you talk to your colleagues, is there a way you say that a little shorter now?
We say B51 1304, but it's still not very snappy.
If you just say B51, it sounds, oh, that's kind of cool.
Break out into songs, yep.
Well, thank you very much. We're delighted here. This is great news.
Thank you for having me and for sharing this news.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. All right, the kind of results that Dr. White just described required years of research. Those are the end results of the scientific process. Now let's talk about the very beginning of the scientific process and how you can participate. With us this morning are Tammy Peterman, President of the Kansas City Division of the University of Kansas Health System, and Dr. Matthias Salate, Vice Chancellor of Research at the University of Kansas Medical Center. Welcome to you both.
Thanks.
It's great to have you. And happy holidays to everybody, too, I should say. Too often, healthcare is one size fits all. And we've known that doing research trials for years, right? It's like we're swinging a sledgehammer here. Treatments mean that the average patient may get better or may not. But an individual patient, well, how are you going to behave? Because it all kind of got averaged out. It's important to conduct research with as many different people as possible. That's why a nationwide research program called All of Us is working to enroll 1 million people. Now, you just heard about that trial that had 1,600 patients in it. 1 million people to improve healthcare through research. It is important that folks here in the Midwest are represented in this study, which could greatly increase the development of precision medicine treatments tailored for an individual patient. Tammy, tell us a little bit more about the All of Us research program. Where are we participating in?
Sure. No, I think it's really important. You know, we've been talking about this for a while now. What I know is that people are going to be very interested once they hear just a little bit more about this program. It's sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. This is, as you said, will develop one of the largest healthcare databases in the world. That's really pretty remarkable. And one of the things we talked about is that this will actually help pave the path to precision medicine. That's really important because what we know is this will help inform hundreds and probably thousands of studies in the future so that we can target very specific treatment modalities based upon individuals and the differences. I think it's really important. I also think it's important that here in the Midwest we're represented, and we're very proud to be participating in this and certainly leading this. The University of Kansas Health System, University of Kansas Medical Center coming together to lead the Midwest Consortium, which is comprised of the University of Missouri, University of Iowa, and University of Nebraska. It's really a big deal for the Midwest and certainly a big deal for our organization, University of Kansas Medical Center and University of Kansas Health System.
So Jayhawks over Huskers, Hawkeyes and Tigers. Okay, I like it.
Well,
yeah,
you know, Steve.
Can't quite say it like I'll be in trouble after this. So Dr. Salate, this is an NIH-funded program giving the medical center and its partners more than $6 million to help collect this data. What is the purpose of collecting all that data?
So the purpose is really to follow these people. I don't say patients because, you know, some don't have any health issues. So to really follow these people over time. The idea is if you take a sample, a blood sample, a urine sample today, can you predict what the people are at risk over time? And that's the whole idea of that study. So you take a blood sample, you look at the biomarkers that you find in them, you then follow these subjects over time as long as you can, and that is done by electronic medical records. So that's the modern time and the era that we can actually do that. And then see whether you could have predicted what the risks of disease are and intervene early, or intervene specifically, like we said, not just with a broad stroke of medications, but specifically for that pattern of biomarkers that you find initially in these subjects, blood or urine, or what you wanted to look at.
Tammy, why might patients want to participate? What's in it for them?
Well, I think, first of all, I think people do want to participate in something as big and as important to this. I think people want to participate. I think the Midwest will want to be represented in this. I also think it's important for them to know how important it is that we were selected for a lot of reasons. I know because of the great work that happens in the research on our campus, but it's also because we have great diversity here. We have diversity in terms of ethnic diversity. We also have diversity in terms of we have rural populations, we have urban populations. That's really important that all of those populations get represented in this study. That's one of the reasons I think people want to participate.
It's a really big deal. So 1 million people is a lot. Why are so many people needed?
Well, I think it's important to have a really broad database, particularly as we're looking at all of these diverse diverse populations. You have to have a broad database. And I think, as Dr. Salate said, these individuals will be tracked over a long period of time so that we can learn not just at a point in time, but over a long period of time. And to have a lot of diversity in that database over a long period of time is what will benefit this entire study, but also for studies in the future.
So, Dr. Salate, we have those 4 institutions, and Tammy had mentioned those. Tell us why those 4 in particular were selected. Besides us, why the other 3?
Well, when you look at a lot of studies published by the NIH or funded by the NIH and others, in the middle of the country, there's sort of a hole. It's not black, but it's the heartland.
It's a gap,
and
yeah.
It's a gap. And we need to fill that. You know, there are a lot of people here that not only want to participate, they should participate because there is information in the heartland of especially rural populations that are usually underrepresented in these kinds of studies. So that was the idea. How do we fill the gap? And when you look at the map of the United States and you look at these 4 institutions, they truly fill the gap of that heartland, and that's why we proposed that to the NIH.
When will patients start enrolling? Or when can people start enrolling, I should say? Because you're correct, it's not a patient. They're good folks who are trying to enroll in it.
So we hope that by early spring we can do that. You know, as you all know, studies are complicated to start up. You need a lot of approvals from different entities, and you need to also make sure that all the processes that you have in place protect the subjects. Like, if you give electronic data, that needs to be done in a protected way, and you need to have processes in place to say, we stop this if a patient wants to withdraw consent, for instance. So these processes are well on the way, so we hope, I'm thinking March, April, we should be able to enroll. And we heard a lot of positive feedback already of people sort of lining up to be part of that. And we're looking forward to that.
All right. So, Tammy, how long of a commitment does this make for someone if they're in the study?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we want this to be a longitudinal study so that we can, with everyone participating for a long period of time. I think they haven't determined what the end point is. What we know is we want the individuals to participate for years at a time, because we think that's really important. I think that will help really look at the differences that people have, whether it's the geography, the environment, the other diverse factors. And if we can do that over time, I just think we're going to make better decisions and have better information. This is a pretty important time, and as soon as we get started, we're going to really get started, because we know that the goal of the Midwest Consortium is to enroll 6,000 participants in the first year. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Goal. That's right. So if someone does sign up, what's expected of them?
Well, we'll want them to do some surveys. We'll want them to participate by getting some specimens, some saliva or urine or blood. So there will be a number of different things. It'll be easy for people to sign up. We want to make it easy for people to sign up. We'll do that. We know that people, and I love it that we're not saying patients, because they may not be patients. Anyone can participate. We'll be making sure that people know the locations that they can go to, but they can also go to the All of Us website to participate.
So, Dr. Salate, this isn't a study in the traditional sense of the word, but the data collected will help in many future studies. Talk with us about how that's going to work.
I want to say something first.
Go right ahead.
So when you think about it, I'm going to participate in a study, and then years later, I may or may not have a benefit. Mm-hmm. That is a true statement, except it's actually not fully true. Because what you get immediately, well, in a few months, is actually your whole genome will be sequenced. And if you're willing to get that information, you will get it with your primary care physician. Now, we know all that we have already identified certain risk genes. And if you're interested, we actually will tell you what these are if you have them and what we could do. So you don't have to wait 10 years to actually get a benefit from there. You will get many more benefits if more is known. But that's a fairly immediate benefit to all the subjects that are in this study. And I think that is very enticing for a lot of people to think about it, because health insurance doesn't really pay for this at this point.
Right, and your insurance company doesn't get the information.
The insurance company, no, it's all highly confidential. This is not a risk for losing insurance or anything like that, and the same for that. So the second question, what will you get over time, is the more we learn what risk factors we can predict from these biosamples. You had your biosample taken, and so over time, all of this information that will be accumulating over the years will be back applicable to you, and you will be informed about that.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty remarkable deal, and it really is. I mean, you and I practice in this space, cystic fibrosis, in which medications have been developed for specific genetic types. Can we call that precision medicine?
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the leaders of precision medicine. What we just heard about cancer, there is very clear precision medicine applied today, but in many areas of medicine, it is not yet.
Yeah, it's kind of like that blunt instrument. We know in CF it's completely changed the lives. We're telling people they're going to have to worry about retirement instead of having to worry about funerals at age 20 or 25, and that's a pretty striking difference, I think. So Tammy, how is it important? We talked about the diversity of our population. Talk to us a little bit. Who's going to be eligible?
Anyone is eligible. Anyone can
cool.
participate. I think that's really important, and we've talked about this a little earlier as well, making sure that people know they don't have to be a patient. They can participate. They can go to the All of Us website. We will have some locations within our health system. We'll be sharing those as probably in an upcoming segment, just to make sure that people know very specifically as we progress over the beginning of the next calendar year. But I think it's important to know that anyone can participate, and that's really good. I've talked to people who just can't wait to sign up, and I think that's great. There's a lot of energy around this. As people hear more about it, a lot of people are going to want to participate. I think word of mouth will also get out.
Yeah, I think that and then the thing you can contribute to this study is yourself.
Absolutely.
That's great. Dr. Salate, precision medicine, though, it's not a new concept. We're already seeing it in advances in some of the different treatments, such as CAR T therapy, tailored for a specific patient and their specific cancer. You and I talked about cystic fibrosis. Talk about the potential for this precision medicine now in treating other diseases.
Well, theoretically, right, you can tailor each therapy to a patient's genetic or proteomics. You know, it's not only the genes, it's other influences as well. But the hope is that we're not having these blunt instruments. Like, you have hypertension, we give you a medication, and it may or may not work. We actually don't know that. We hope that we will know what to give you to actually be successful with the least side effects. That's another important piece, right? Certain medications have very large side effects in certain human beings and not in others. So we want to all predict that and actually tailor the therapy to every disease to you. Now, this is a bold goal, obviously, but I don't think it's not achieved. I mean, it can be achieved. There's nothing that we cannot achieve. With these kinds of informatics tools that have been developed, and maybe that's a difficult statement now, with also artificial intelligence, we can actually look through huge data sets and extract data for individual subjects that we just were not able to do before.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. You think about the blood pressure, the hypertension trials. You have this huge group of patients, and everybody, do they overall benefit from this new drug or not? And if they did, then it got approved for everybody.
Yep.
But it may have only been worked in a few of them, but the overall benefit seemed to be there. On the other hand, it may not have worked for other people, and that gets kind of lost in the final result, right?
Right, and we know that. You know, some of these studies were sub-analyzed into different groups, but statistically this is difficult, and therefore it's not fully valid. And we know that certain people did not benefit from it at all. But in the final approval, that was not obviously done.
Yeah, that's not how it looks.
And that's basically a trial of error every time you give a patient a medication. That sounds worse than it is, but you know, the hope is that will go away.
Yeah, I think this is a remarkable story. Tammy, a lot of people, though, they're going to worry about their information being kept private. How will we make sure that it's maintained?
All of us will follow all federal, state, and local laws to really keep the data safe. We know that that's very important, but also making sure that the information is de-identified so that it can't be identified to a specific person. So I think there is great security around this, and I think people will trust the process. They know that this is something that has been done across the country, and certainly the NIH we'll make sure that we also are all following all of the guidelines, but of course that's what we do with all studies anyway.
Right, and that's what we have to do every day with our patients' information,
Absolutely.
right? We got to keep all that information.
We know how to
really
do
safe.
this.
We do. So Dr. Salte, talk a little bit about prevention and treatment versus just treatment alone.
Well, so we already know, when you look at cholesterol trials, for instance, that is in many cases a prevention, right? You have a high cholesterol, you have heart risk, you will get medications to lower cholesterol. That's a preventive medication. Or you had a heart attack and you have also these, and then you treat the heart attack, and that's its treatment. So when we look at these biomarkers, we can predict, hopefully with many more diseases, what are the diseases that you at risk at, and prevent them through tailored interventions. That is different from you coming to the physician and already have a disease and then look at what works for you to treat that disease. The concept is very similar. It's just whether that disease has been established yet or not. And obviously, the best medicine is actually to prevent diseases and to make us, healthy and not have to worry about that disease because we prevented it.
All right, this has been an amazing discussion. So let's talk about how to enroll. It's actually really simple. Go to joinallofus.org for all of the information and answers to your questions. Well, we're here to answer your questions. Send them using the links on your screen, YouTube, Facebook, the X platform, or email the Medical News Network. We'll get to those questions in just a moment. But now we're going to check in with Dr. Dana Hawkinson, Medical Director of Infection Prevention Control here at the Health System. Hawk,
Hi.
We had a big jump in COVID last week. Okay, first, wait a minute. Time out.
Yeah.
Let's see it. Okay, let's take a vote, everybody. If you're online right now, vote for the Beatles or Flashy Red. Where are you going to go here, people? Where are you going to go?
It's a tie.
I got a tie on, too. Oh, wait a minute. All right. How are the COVID numbers this week, Doc Hawk?
The COVID admissions are much better, down from 33, which we had seen an increase over the previous few weeks, down to 26 in the hospital here at KU Hospital. We have other places that we also look at admissions as well, some of our outpatient places, but really 26 inpatient admissions. We had 7 in the ICU last week, 4 in the ICU this week. So
I love the trend. We saw that blip in the fall where we kind of hit 30 and went right back down. We hit 33, we went down. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, another drop next week.
Yeah. And
then we'll see where we land after the Christmas holidays. Is that fair?
I think it is fair. I think we are optimistic. We are always ready and concerned for these spikes, especially during this respiratory viral season. I would say, though, that unfortunately the COVID testing over the past 3 weeks has been increased. And so we have to believe, and we know that with increased testing, and so far what we see, we've also seen increased percent positive of that testing. And that is just a marker kind of what we can see in the community and the community spread. And so here we have some, what is this one?
This is the number of tests, I think, that were positive last week.
So this is the positive tests and the percentage, and you can see that there. Just a slow increase, unfortunately. So that's the number of tests, but also, unfortunately, the percent positive as well. And we have some other graphs also, but
I think one of the concerns is that Kansas and Missouri have some of the highest test positivity rates in the country.
Yeah.
And I think we're a little nervous about that, and so that wastewater testing was important. But really, it's our admissions ultimately they're going to tell us how severe the outbreak is.
Yep, and this is showing overall admissions for COVID in the
and RSV.
dark
this
bar,
is the RSV one.
and influenza.
Yep.
So we can see there that overall, really the influenza and the COVID admissions are slightly down from last week, but RSV is up a little bit. And I think we have some RSV specific as well.
There we go, RSV inpatients.
And unfortunately, what we're seeing there, though, the blue bar, within that large bar to the right, the blue is the pediatric. So a lot of pediatric disease out there, and we know those are the most vulnerable, especially for RSV disease. So.
Yeah. I think the challenge for us is that we're going to be in the Christmas holidays. What we always say, the rules of infection prevention keep you safe no matter where you go, no matter the time of year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if you are at risk or anything like that, masking is still probably recommended. But for the general population, we know that most people are probably going to enjoy a Christmas holiday without a mask.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just kind of gave an interview to a college publication about people living in dorms and things of that nature. And I said, really, the best things you can do is prepare. So, obviously be up to date with your vaccines. That is vitally important. But it's the very simple things that you just talked about that I really promoted. And that is, you can always wear a mask if you want to. We know that masking does help provide reduced risk of infection to those that wear the mask if it is properly fitting, even if people around you are not wearing it. The other major factor is that hand hygiene. Very frequent and good hand hygiene. The alcohol sanitizer or the good, or just soap and water. And then just avoiding touching your hands to your eyes, your nose, or your mouth, because we know that those high touch surfaces are contaminated with those viruses all the time. And that is a major way that people get the infections.
So my mother was right back in 1963 when she said, Stephen, wash your hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. All right. Alexis Del Cid has been monitoring our feeds for your questions. Alexis, what are our viewers asking this morning?
We're getting several questions about where people can get that BioDraw. Can they get it at their primary care physician? Is it available in rural locations of Kansas and Missouri? And how do they go about doing that?
So the answer to that is no, they can't get it at a primary care physician right now. We're rolling out several ways to enroll and provide the specimen sampling kits, but we will start here at the University of Kansas Medical Center and then roll it out hopefully in much more rural areas as well. So people who want to provide these biospecimens, they need to be just a bit patient until we have it all out.
And they want to know, another question is, how do they know when it's ready? Do they proactively make the call?
So they can enroll online, as Dr. Stites said, and we will then have this information, but we also will advertise and bring the information out to the community when that is ready.
Ruth has a follow-up question to that. She wants to know if there's an age requirement.
Well, right now we are enrolling adults. That means over 18 years of age. We are in discussion with the NIH, but this is very early stages for enrolling pediatric patients as well. That will roll out, but I can't give you a time frame for that one yet.
Another question that came in is about the cost. Is there any cost to the person who is enrolling in this?
The answer is no. There is no cost to the patient or the subjects. That's a great benefit, like I said. You get a lot of information and down the stretch, but you're not on the hook for any costs of that.
Another question that just came in is, what if more people want to participate? Is there a cutoff?
Hi, that's it. So I wish we will be in this situation, and then we will really try to enroll more. Currently, like Tammy said, we're on the hook for 6,000 subjects per year, hopefully over a 5-year period. If more, we welcome them. I'm sure we can figure out how to enroll more people.
And just to say, wouldn't that be a great problem?
I love that problem. I actually love the question because I think that's indicating that people are interested.
Yeah.
Paul has an interesting question. He wants to know, if a subject in a study has a risk factor and exercise is recommended, is there an option to join an exercise program at the health system?
Ooh, I don't know that we have that carved out yet.
I don't think we have that one.
No, not yet. That's a great question.
It is.
We'll put that in mind and think about the answer to that in the long run.
And then Ruth Ellen Ruth Ellen has a comment for you, Dr. Stites. She writes, Dr. Stites needs a Star Trek sweater, and then that will be a hard choice. So Ruth isn't happy with just your vest and tie. She wants you to step it up a notch.
All right, live long and prosper. We'll see about that.
Okay, Ruth. Dr. Stites heard you. And then Angela writes, we got our COVID and flu vaccines last month, RSV this last Friday, big happy face. So Angela just wanted to share.
Yeah.
Hawkeye, does that make you happy? Is that like your best Christmas present right there?
I think that makes all of us happy, right? I mean,
all of us.
That was good.
Very
that is
nice.
good. So, yeah, absolutely.
We have a follow-up question. This is also from Ruth. So Ruth wants Dr. Stites to wear a Star Trek vest. She's not happy. She has a COVID question, though, for Dr. Hawkinson.
I could do that. I could do that. But trust me, I can do that. And I do have a Star Trek tie. And when Star Trek Discovery comes on again in April of 2024, you're going to see it.
There you go. Okay, well, we're going to hold you to that. Ruth wants to know if the current COVID vaccine will protect us for a whole year or if we're going to need a booster.
Yeah. So I think this is a really good question. I think this kind of really gets to the heart of kind of some basic immunology. So, and also some of the data that we have from previous updated vaccinees. So what we do know is that there is a little bit of protection from infection shortly after getting the updated booster, the updated vaccine, when we're looking at some of the older data. That protection is very small, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks at the most, about reducing your risk of an infection. As far as continuing to reduce your risk of hospitalization, there is very good data supporting the significant reduction in risk of hospitalization and severe disease about 3 to 4 months after that vaccine is given, and then it does decrease a little bit from there. In addition, we do see decreases with older age as well. So, and that is why I think the recommendation is to give this new updated vaccine during this respiratory viral season to get you through the largest part, the greatest proportion, when that virus is circulating the most, to reduce your risk of hospitalization and severe disease. But, you know, does it last the full year? That's more of a question of basic immunology. So we know that you develop antibodies from your B cell responses, but more importantly, you develop these T cell responses, and those B cells and T cells will continue to live long-term and provide protection as well. But we do see a little bit of that reduced protection as we get further than 4 or 5 months out from that vaccine dose. But you will continue to have an immune response. You will continue to have protection. So I hope that answered your question, but there were nuances to that. It's
Right.
based on previous data, but also just understanding the immune system itself.
Susan has a question. Susan wants to know, what happens if I have to drop out before my commitment is over?
That is expected, that some people will.
We hope it doesn't happen.
Well,
it could happen.
It could happen, but there is no penalty associated with that. I mean, obviously, in any research study, you can withdraw your consent. Now, the only complicated matter here is, how do you drop out? Are you dropping out by saying, I don't want my medical record data anymore submitted to the database? Or do you also want your biospecimens withdrawn? And these are two different questions. Both are possible. If you don't withdraw your biospecimens, then you still will benefit from the information coming later. If you do that, then obviously you have withdrawn your biospecimens and these cannot be used anymore. So nothing bad will happen to you. Hopefully you will continue to be in that study, and we will give you information as it comes along if you don't withdraw your biospecimens.
Cameron wants you to look into your crystal ball. How long do you think it's going to take to sign up 1 million people?
Well, actually, I have a crystal ball from a patient of mine. It still doesn't work.
Do you
However,
have a Star Trek sweater?
I don't have a Star Trek sweater, but I can get one. But so the issue is, we have been starting this in March, April of this year, but the NIH has done it for a while. So currently there are about 500,000, more or less, patients within the study that have given biospecimens and being followed, and 720,000 have signed up for it. So we're not quite there yet, and how long that will take, we'll see. So hopefully within the next 3 to 5 years, or no, I say 5 years, but I think it's probably going to take even longer than that. But we're well on the way, so it's not that we're starting at zero.
We have another question from Nate. Nate wants to know, will I be paid for my time?
Well, that depends on it. There will be a small token of appreciation, but being paid is not like, you know, a large amount of money.
So what's the token of appreciation that she said?
There's a small amount of money being provided.
Okay. And we have one more question from Marcia. Marcia asks, how long do you think it will be until we see the results of this research program in the form of new ways to prevent and treat disease?
I do not have a crystal ball, so
You said you had a
We've
crystal
established
ball.
it. You have one, but it's not
Now
working.
you're trying to.
okay, I don't have a functional crystal ball.
Right.
Okay.
As you understand, there are like 500,000 people in that database currently that are being followed, and these data sets are basically analyzed on a continuous basis, together with the genomic data analysis. So it could be in a few years we know much more, but the full benefit, if you look at other longitudinal studies, meaning where you follow patients over long periods of time, like Framingham, there are still data coming out from these studies that ended like 2-3 decades ago. So there will be a huge amount of information that can be used, I think, for decades in the future. And the first relevant data sets will come out in a few years from now.
I think it's going to be impressive because precision medicine is marching along already in other areas. And so what we're really trying to do is take a much bigger look at the entire genome across millions of people, or a million people.
And the current ability to actually look at large data sets that we couldn't really do in the past. A full genome sequence, when was that? Francis Collins published the first human genome sequence in about 2001. Mm-hmm. It's 20 years later, and we do it on 1 million people, in a very speedy way. We have come a very, very long way, and we have now the ability to really look at these complex data sets that we just couldn't do before for computational reasons.
And will this study go international?
I'm sorry?
Is there any thought about this going international?
Well, so the UK has a similar study going on right now, and I think these will be popping up over, all civilized world, I'm sure. And then the real question comes, how do you extend that in areas where it's much more difficult to do? Yeah. But I'm sure that we will have answers to that as well.
Well, this has been a really wonderful discussion, and I'm grateful for all of our guests for being here. I'd like to get some final thoughts before we go. Tammy Peterman.
Well, I just want people to stay tuned. There's going to be more information coming out on this, but to just know that this is really big and important. And I think it's great that the Midwest is participating, and that right here at the University of Kansas Health System and the University of Kansas Medical Center, that we're taking a lead with the Midwest Consortium. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Are you proud to be in it?
I'm really proud of it. I think it's great, and I just think we have people who are dedicated to continuing to advance medicine, and certainly paving the path for precision medicine is the way of the future.
And we know that we shouldn't, what is it that you'd like to say about being proud?
We'll always be proud, because great things happen, but never satisfied. We can always do a little bit more. Yeah.
Make sure all these people stay on that trail.
Yeah.
So Dr. Salate, final thoughts.
We're living in an incredibly exciting time. This is transformation in medicine, how we really didn't envision it a few years ago. And we see the benefits of that already. So whoever listens here, please participate, because this will be changing the way we treat and the way we prevent. It's incredibly exciting. And to have our population, and also the rural population, underrepresented in these studies is unbelievably exciting and important. So
and all of Wyandotte County, because it's an incredibly diverse area.
It is incredibly important, and we are filling the void of the middle of the country.
Yeah, that's great. Doc Hawk.
Yeah, I think echoing that, again, please participate, and we need as many different demographics and populations as possible. That will serve everybody better, our community, our nation, our world. So I think that's a great message. In addition, with the holidays coming up and people have been getting together, will continue to be getting together, prepare yourself and your loved ones the best you can. Please get your updated vaccines. You still have time to do that, and practice those pillars of public health wherever you go. Frequent, adequate hand hygiene. Don't touch your hands to your eyes, your nose, your mouth. You can always wear a mask if you feel uncomfortable. Understand what situations you're in, and those things will help reduce your chance of being infected with not only SARS-CoV-2, but all of those respiratory viruses out there as well.
We've talked in this program many times about the impact of faith, hope, and science. And I think, faith right now that will keep your information private, and that this will come to be a great result. Hope about the impact of what this can do. and then the science. And I'm just reminded of one of the patients who I follow with cystic fibrosis. We talk about that a lot, and Dr. Salte and I have been engaged in it. Amy supported me doing that for many years, thank you. You know, one of the hallmarks of that disease is severe coughing, a lot of mucus production. And I remember a patient with a specific genetic defect receiving a medication to treat that. And her husband wondered about her because he didn't hear her coughing the morning after she started taking the drug. And he went up to the stairs and wanted to check on her because he was afraid something had happened. She had fallen, something bad had happened. And he saw her at the top of the stairs. He said, "What happened? I didn't hear you coughing." She goes, "I don't have to cough. I don't have to cough." What did that mean to that individual in that one moment when precision medicine so completely changed her life? I don't have to cough. May it be true for all of us as we approach this wonderful holiday season. Thanks again to all of our guests and to our audience. We'll see you again soon.
In his personal life, he goes by Terry, but you may know him as Car Santa. I'm Alexis Del Cid. On the next All Things Heart, how doctors saved his life and his legs with some cutting-edge medicine.
Subscribe to our morning medical update and open mics with Dr. Stites podcasts. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.